But then my second worst symptom was heavy bleeding. I was bleeding through a marina. So it has to be really heavy. For my poor marina was bobbing around like a cork inside of me. The year before I finally got it treated, I bled for 42 weeks out of 52. Like
42 weeks out of 52. That
42
is
weeks out of
so
52.
abnormal. Sorry.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, you're told to expect abnormal bleeding when you're in peri. And so I just kind of assumed it's abnormal. And yes, I did see doctors about it and they put me on tranexamic acid and things like that would lessen the flow.
All right. It's a real pleasure to have Shelly Horton on the show. Welcome.
I am so excited that I finally get to chat with you.
I was introduced to you by my besties, my podcasting besties, Nicola and Di from Over the Back Fence. And I was listening to your episode and I was like, how did I not know Shelly? This is insane that our paths have not crossed until just now. So I am super excited to be really connected to you now. And it's just, you're halfway around the world, but we'll have to
Yeah,
somehow connect in person.
I love that. It's like sisters on the other end of the globe, opposite sides of the globe.
Exactly. So I want to jump right in because I saw that when I was kind of looking in your background and what are you doing? And I'm so impressed. And you're doing such a good job. And I want to talk about your book, I'm Your Peri-Godmother. I love that title, by the way. But you hosted the So Hot Right Now event at the Sydney
Yeah.
Opera House with Dr. Mary Claire Haver, Dr. Vonda Wright, Kelly Casperson, Dr. Louise Newson. These are many of our guests on our podcast. And I was so
Yes.
excited that you had this event and I knew about it and you were hosting it. So tell us what that was like.
Oh, can I tell you? I know I should say that my wedding was the best day of my life, but I think that So Hot Right Now might have been the best day of my life. It was magical and it was obviously incredibly stressful. It's the Sydney Opera House, so it's iconic. It was a sold out event, so we had 2,500 people in the audience.
Wow.
And I MC events all the time. That's part of my job. So I don't really get nervous doing things like that. I was so nervous that when I walked out on stage, my top lip stuck to my gum because my mouth was so dry. But I was fine. Once I got over my introduction, I was completely fine. And it was the most incredibly supportive and just imagine a room of people who are just thirsty for information and just so happy to be there. And all of those meno experts. I don't follow rock stars anymore. I have my menopause experts who are my heroes. And for me to be able to interview them on stage and just watch them do their thing. And the other thing I've got to tell you, Zora, they are so generous and kind and so incredibly just welcoming and just there's no competitiveness, there's no protecting their turf. It was really a beautiful, joyful experience. And then at the end of the event, it was a standing ovation and a
Oh,
standing ovation in the Sydney Opera House. There were tears. It was a really incredible, incredible day.
I wish I was there, but I heard
Yeah.
about it. And obviously it was such a successful event. And actually the girls are getting together again in October in New York City.
In New
It's like
York. Yeah, I
another
saw
repeat.
that.
Yeah, super cool. Okay, then let's talk about your book because it's got the title that I wish I wrote. It's I'm Your Peri-Godmother. It's brilliant. It's so personal. It's so empowering. And you've had actually a really successful career in TV and journalism, which I'm going to again learning more as I dig into your background. But what was it about your perimenopause journey that made you pivot and then become the Peri-Godmother?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was I had never heard the word perimenopause when I went into perimenopause.
Neither did
And
I.
I love that now we have podcasts like yours, we have books. My Instagram feed is flooded with perimenopause. But back in 2020, that was not the case. So this has changed a lot in 5 years. So for me, because I didn't know the term, I didn't recognize the symptoms or identify myself as someone who'd be going through perimenopause. And I had such limited knowledge about menopause itself. Like I thought menopause was just for 60-year-old ladies. They had some hot flushes and their period stopped. The end. Oh boy, was I wrong. I now I'm just like, I want to go back and shake 2020 me and go, get informed. This is coming for you. Yeah, so what happened was again, and it was 2020, so there was a global pandemic going on at the same time. So pandemic and peri, not a great combo.
No.
And also, because of that, a lot of the symptoms I just wrote off as the stress from the pandemic. So, my very first symptom was heart palpitations. Now, I now know that that is so common. But back then, I thought my anxiety was out of control and the world was ending. So it was perfectly normal. And then I didn't get traditional hot flushes. And I didn't know that hot flushes, and we also in Australia, we call them hot flushes, not flashes like you guys do. I don't even know why. It's one of those weird things. But I didn't have the traditional movie hot flushes where you'd get that like heat from head to toe. I just felt about 3 degrees hotter all the time. But I also had put on a few COVID kilos, so I kind of put it down to that. And then, unfortunately, I am like 1 in 3 women that I got perimenopausal depression, and I had never had mental health issues before. So that was a big shock to me, even though I've been a health journalist. I've written about depression. I should have seen the signs, but when you're in it, it's so hard to see it. And so the only thing that finally got me to go to a doctor was I had been using Marina, the IUD, for 12 years. So I'd had a couple of replacements and I had not had a period for 12 years. And it was like, oh, it was like my nirvana not having a period. And then all of a sudden, I could only describe it as having an Armageddon period where I actually bled through my clothes. And so that's when I was like, I better go and see a doctor. But unfortunately, I don't have a regular GP. I just went to a clinic and that doctor had not been taught about perimenopause. So when I told her about my symptoms, she's like, oh, bleeding with an IUD could be cancer. Yeah. So I spiraled, surprisingly. And then I had to go and have an internal ultrasound. And I went back a couple of days and she's like, and we'll do your bloods. And she's like, your bloods are normal. Great news. You haven't got cancer. You're just not managing your stress very well. Maybe you should take up a hobby.
That just blew my mind when I read
I
that.
know.
It's such a classic story in the sense that, like you mentioned in the book, too, most doctors are not trained in menopause. They don't not trained to look out for these things,
Yeah.
and they just brush it aside. And I'm so sorry to hear, like, when I read that you were told, like, perhaps this could be cancer. Oh my
Yeah.
God. This is something that happened to me actually when I gave birth to my second child. I had a cyst on my breast and they said, oh, I will have to get a biopsy. Do you have any cancer in your family? My mother died of breast cancer. So I was like, don't
Oh
tell
my
me
goodness.
that. And I lived like you did. It just, I was like weeks and weeks without a diagnosis. They did the biopsy. And I know that stress that you live like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm going to have cancer. It's terrible. Doctors don't really understand that their language and their delivery
Yeah.
is so impactful to the patient. And maybe there's something that we can do, and you're probably the better expert at that, is in terms of being able to filter some of this information, not put the doctor on a pedestal and that's everything
Well,
and that's all true. We tend to do that, but maybe
I think that is a very common thing, particularly I'm Gen X and I grew up in country Queensland where doctors were gods. You never questioned them. They knew more than you do. And now I'm like, actually, my doctor is just my health teammate. I'm going to have a team of health professionals looking after me and they better be up to speed. So it was a big change for me to finally find a doctor who knew what they were talking about. But I've got to tell you, like, I got to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And I'm a very bubbly, confident person. And for my mental health to get that low, all because a doctor had just patronizingly tapped me on the head and sent me on my way. Like that, I could have become a statistic because of that. So once I actually did get onto HRT or MHT, whatever you like to call it, and I started to feel better, instead of feeling grateful, I just got really mad. I got so mad that I had slipped through the cracks. I was mad at my mum for not warning me, but my mum's generation, they don't talk about it at all. And so I decided I had to do a lot of soul searching, and I have a really good psychiatrist, Professor Jay Sri Kulkarni, who is also features in my book, and she was at the Opera House event as well, and sort of came to the realization that I'm not mad at my mother, I'm now mad for her, that she was treated so poorly by the medical system, and she put up with really rough symptoms and she was just taught that she had to swallow all of those feelings and be silent. Yeah, it's been quite a roller coaster of wanting to blame people and getting angry about it. And I think that was kind of what spurred me on to write the book because particularly, I know there's lots of medical books out there about menopause, but because I didn't think that applied to me, because I was far too young at 45, in fact, I was spot on for perimenopause. I wanted mine to be a little bit funny, a little bit sweary, like not your regular book about perimenopause, but for it to be evidence-based so that women who read my book know that everything that I've got in that book is backed up by clinical trials. It is backed up by the best world experts because that's the book I needed and I wish I'd had. It would have saved 9 months of my life.
Yeah. But thank God you're here because, like you said, it could have spiraled in a really bad
Yeah.
direction. I'm so grateful you wrote this book. It's like your girlfriend, honestly, telling you, like sitting you down, going, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I appreciate too the experts as well. I'm reading their books and
Yeah.
they're just brilliant. But in the book, you also shared that your symptoms got really bad. You actually ended up in an ICU. So why don't
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit how that happened and then how that
Yeah. So
your mission?
I would say that my worst symptom was the perimenopausal depression. That nearly took me out. But then my second worst symptom was heavy bleeding. Now it got to I was bleeding through a marina. So it has to be really heavy for my poor marina was bobbing around like a cork inside of me. And the year before I finally got it treated, I bled for 42 weeks out of 52. Like
42 weeks out of 52. That
42
is
weeks out of
so
52.
abnormal. Sorry.
Yeah. But you know what? Again, you're told to expect abnormal bleeding when you're in peri. And so I just kind of assumed it's abnormal. And yes, I did see doctors about it and they put me on tranexamic acid and things like that would lessen the flow. But then once I went off that, like I have this horrible memory. I was emceeing on a cruise ship, as you do. Like this is my life is crazy. But my husband was there and because he's a cameraman and so he was filming me and I was doing the razzle dazzle because no matter how sick I felt, how exhausted I felt, I could still rally and do my job. But then we went back to the our cabin and I actually just sat on the toilet and let the blood just drip out of me. Like it was that just shows you, just imagine how exhausting that would feel. And then later on, I was wearing a tampon, a super tampon, and we went and had a spa. And as I was getting out of the spa, my husband was like, quick, get a towel because blood had run all the way down my leg. So it's just like, it's just humiliating and exhausting. My iron levels had just bottomed out. And so there was the big debate about whether or not I should have a hysterectomy or an ablation and all of that sort of thing. So finally, after lots of back and forth and some really horrible experiences, like I went to a gynecologist who said to me she didn't think an ablation would be enough, that I should have a hysterectomy. And she said, and while you're under, I'm going to take your ovaries as well. And I went, hang on, that will put me into medical menopause. And all of the research says conserve your ovaries if you can. And she said, Oh, I don't really know much about menopause, but I'm a good cutter.
Oh my
This is
God.
a gynecologist who's putting women into medical menopause every single week.
Terrible.
Like,
Oh my
isn't that
God.
just horrendous? So anyway, I finally found a gynecologist who said, you know what, let's try the ablation first because it's a 15-minute procedure. Let's give it a go. And if it doesn't work, then we'll look down the track about the hysterectomy. So I have had many surgeries in my life. I was a very sick kid, so general anesthetics and things do not worry me. I don't get anxious. I'm fine. Went in there and was like laughing with the nurses, just completely fine. And then next minute, I wake up and I'm in the ICU. Something went wrong with the anesthetic and my lung collapsed. And it was a full code red. They had to do an emergency intubation. They chipped my tooth. It was such a panic. I had four cannulas in my arms. I've never been so bruised. My throat was shredded, and I felt like someone had, like a truck had run over one side of my back, which was the lung that collapsed. And I just was so shocked because it was a 15
Yeah.
minute procedure. No one expects it to go wrong. Anyway, so then I wake up and the gynecologist and the anaesthetist come and see me. And they're like, whew, you gave us a scare. But they said to me at the time, we think it's because you're overweight and you have big boobs and all of your weight is in your belly, and that's put a lot of pressure on the lungs. And I just accepted that because, again, I didn't question them. And then it wasn't until I was home and recovering that, again, I had an appointment with my psychiatrist. And she was just like, that is bullshit. They stuffed up. And she just said, can you stop being a victim and start being a journalist and think about what has just happened to you? She said, there's a little thing called a rib cage that protects your lungs. And the only way for it to collapse is if they stuff up the anesthetic.
Mhm.
And it was like, wow, I just immediately deferred, which I feel like I should be stronger than that. But in the time when it is life and death, honestly was life and death, it was so terrifying. And then Professor Jay Shri Kulkarni said to me, because this is what I love about her. She's not a mamby-pamby psychiatrist. She is facts and figures. She's like, you're a journalist. I'm going to send you the clinical studies that show that if that anaesthetist had just said to you, I am so sorry, something went terribly wrong, but we got you back, and we're so grateful we did. She said, your recovery psychologically would have been 3 weeks, but by her lying about it, it's a 6 week recovery. And she's like, they just won't admit it because then I could sue. And but
That's
my psychiatrist said to
terrible.
me, I don't want you to sue because that will just prolong the trauma. And they've got very deep pockets. So it wasn't a path I wanted to go down. But you know what? Just knowing that it was going to affect me mentally for 6 weeks made it easier to deal with. Then I got better and I was just like, you know what? That was a crazy experience. But now I have not bled for nearly 2 years. The ablation worked. So at least they got that bit right.
Something good that came out of it, but it just, I wouldn't feel bad or blame yourself. Most people are not health literate. Most people don't go into these
Yeah.
things. As much as I know about health, I wouldn't know about half these things either. And you go into a doctor looking for advice, looking for guidance because they're supposed to know more than you. That's why it's important to do as much research or as
Yeah.
I get why, especially when it comes to menopause, many women are just going, it's too much with estrogen, progesterone, hormones. I don't
Yeah.
understand, and uterus, and what does this all mean? It's overwhelming, right? So
Yeah.
I can
I
get
also,
it.
the thing that surprised me, because I consider myself a very strong, smart person, and yet in a situation like that, I deferred to apologizing. I'm so sorry that this happened and I'm not sick enough to be in the ICU. You probably need the bed for someone else. They're probably much sicker than I am. And I was just like, that is such a female thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can't change what happened, but I think if anything like that happened again, I will be a lot more assertive and asking some very hard questions.
Yeah, I think it's very common, I have to say. Not every woman, but I see most of us tend to be the people pleasers, or we're taught when we're children to be a good girl, to be quiet, to be seen, not heard. Not everyone, again, but this is what my experience is, and many women I'm speaking to as well. So we were raised to be like this. And this is why menopause can be such a great time, because we do get the wisdom and we
Right.
kind of get the clue that we don't really need to do that. And then we could set the stage, at least for
Yep.
the next generation or our daughters or granddaughters, and say, hey, let's
Yeah.
not put up with this as you get
I
older.
actually love that. So I think of it as all of my life, it was like dieting, trying to be smaller, trying to people please, trying to all of that. And then now I'm through the worst of it. I want to take up space. I want to be strong. It's really freeing. It's
Yeah.
actually incredible. And in the book, I describe it as menopausal zest. Like it's this newfound part of me that just goes, I'm not putting up with playing small anymore. I'm stepping up and I'm taking space and I'm going to be loud. So look out.
I love it. This is a great, also in your book. You have to, people have just got to read this book, but it reminds me this morning I went to the gym and the trainer, it's a new trainer, and he's like, oh, wow, your legs are bigger than mine. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I took it as a
Yeah.
compliment because I'm working to get strong. And I was like, really okay with it, because that was
But
my
10
mental
years ago,
space.
if a trainer had said that to you, you'd be feeling offended and, oh my God, I've got big legs. No, no, I have got strong legs. They're going to get me through until the day I die. I'm going to be hiking mountains. I'm going to be traveling overseas. I want to get strong so I can always lift my own luggage up into the overhead rack. All of that sort of thing is what's important to me.
Yeah, actually, we did a little recording today. I was like, oh, can you take, I need to make a reel because I want to show what are the four things we need to get strong. Because as we're aging, we want to be able to carry our own groceries. We want to open a
Yeah.
jar by ourselves. We want to lift our grandkids. So he was giving me all these exercises. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And you have to do this. If you want to prepare for your
Yeah.
future self, which is what I'm all about too. So I'm,
Absolutely. This is your whole purpose in life. Well, for me, I only started strength training at the start of the year. So it's been 9 months, but the dead hang, which is your grip strength. So in January, I couldn't even do 1 second. I would just fall.
yeah.
And now I'm up to 40 seconds, and I am so proud of that number. And my goal is to get to 60 seconds by the end of the year. So 3 more months. But I feel so proud of these muscles, and I've become that person that when someone chats to me, I'm like, feel this muscle. It's so strong.
But the progress is instantaneously. And this is why I was, when I'm talking to some women in our community, I said, look, don't focus on weight loss. Don't focus on getting
No.
thin. That's just the mindset. I'm not into that. I said, look on getting strong, maybe getting more seconds as you're hanging on the grip or
Yeah.
more weight on the bar. And that you see instantaneously. I mean, really, really
Yeah.
quickly, you do
And
see
it's quite
results.
addictive too. I actually was talking to someone this week and I said to them, I no longer want the number on the scale to go down. I want the number on my weight bar to go up.
Yes. Good
I'm
one.
like, that is a
I like it.
real flip in my thinking, and I'm so proud of that.
I love it. I love it. So I want to go back because you started to talk about your mental health, and that is something I don't want to let go. It's kind of like put a pin on that. And since we're talking about mindset and everything, anyways, you talked a lot about your struggles with mental health during this transition, and not only in the book, but I've heard you on other podcasts. So what actually helped you reclaim your mind and just get back to your normal self?
So, first of all, I think that HRT saved my life. I really believe that it was the depletion of hormones that have caused this. And what I do want people to know, though, is HRT is not a quick fix. It's not like slap on a patch and then you're better. My mental health had deteriorated to such a low point that I was wanting to hurt myself. So it was a lot of work to get my mental health back. Now, I did go on antidepressants. The doctor put me on antidepressants and HRT straight away. And I honestly believed I needed them. But then it was my psychiatrist who weaned me off the antidepressants and then upped the HRT. And that was terrifying because I was kind of thinking that the antidepressant was what's keeping me alive, when in fact it was the HRT. So it was a very slow process. I also put on 10 kilos with the antidepressant. I don't think doctors even think about that when they prescribe it. Like there are so many other side effects. So what I did is I actually did the work. Now, it took me years to get back to what I was before. But I had regular appointments with my psychiatrist. I also, because I moved interstate in the middle of all of this, so I got my GP to suggest a psychologist in Queensland, where I live now. And I'm you'll learn this about me. I'm pretty straightforward. So I'm like, I call a spade, that's it. So I got into this psychologist room and I'm like, okay, I have perimenopausal depression. I don't need to talk about my childhood. I actually just need strategies to control my rage, to control my depressive thoughts, that sort of thing. And she looked at me and she went, what's perimenopausal depression?
Oh no. Oh no.
So it was like, yeah, sometimes you go, but I think that I was proud of myself that I didn't want to fly across the room and strangle her. I actually just went, okay, I know a lot about this now. Have a look at this website, and how about I come back next week when you've done a bit more research? And you
She
know
was open to
what?
that?
To her credit, I went back and she had worked so hard and she was on top of it. And she thanked me and said, I now am a better psychologist because I'm now aware of this and I will be able to help women for the rest of my career.
Oh.
So that there are upsides with that. But then the other thing I had to do is I really had to make the lifestyle changes alongside the HRT. So protecting my sleep. Oh, I say I treat myself like a toddler. Like I have a bedtime, I have a routine, I know exactly what I need to do. But I know that if I stay up too late, I don't get the right amount of sleep, all of my symptoms are worse the next day. So it's just become something that is so important to me. I started walking every single day, and I didn't do that to lose weight. I did that for my mental health. And you know what? It works. So often it's very common on Instagram, but you see people going, I'm going for a stupid walk for my stupid mental health. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, oh, damn it, it worked. I feel much better. So walking every day, then I protecting my sleep. Then I started strength training, which I just adore now, and upping my protein. Like it is the stuff that I've probably been told to do a long time, but now I don't see lifestyle changes as a nice to have. I see it as a must do.
Mhm.
You just have to make these changes, but it's setting me up for the rest of my life. So I don't want midlife to be where everything goes into decline. This is where I want to ramp up.
I love that. Yes, this is what I've learned from, actually, you probably know Dr. Stacy Sims. That's
Oh,
where I
yes.
how I met Dr. Vonda and all these other women. And I
Yeah.
remember this first conference I went to, it was an online conference, and the message that I got from her and this whole conference was aging and menopause is not about slowing down. That's what people have told me, especially with my osteoarthritis. I was always training, I always have some injury, and they're like, you just need to slow down. And I'm like, no. The message I got from them was actually, you need to speed up. And what I'm
Yeah.
learning now is that actually, as we age, it's a little harder to build muscle. It's a little harder to stay. So
Yeah.
we got to work harder as we age. It's not about slowing down. So I'm
Yeah.
completely on board with your message is that it doesn't mean we go crazy and kill ourselves and injure ourselves, but
Yeah.
we need to get it
No,
out
but
of
it
our
has to
head that
be
we use
like a
down.
strong commitment. Like it can't be a fad that you stick to for 6 weeks and then go, oh, well, it didn't work. You have to actually go, this is a lifestyle change for the rest of my life. And Sure, I fall off the wagon. I have times I'm traveling a lot for work. I'm doing 12 flights in 17 days, which is
Oh,
just, yeah, I know.
wow.
That
That's
is not
great.
great, but you know what it's like when the work's there, you take it.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit rough. Basically, since the book came out, I've just been so crazy busy. But every time I get home, I'm straight to the gym and I just now look forward to it. That's the thing I want to do. So it's funny how you can make that switch in your head and go, no, 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 this is what's going to help me get through that crazy busy period is making sure that I'm doing my strength training, making sure I'm going for my walks and not having a big boozy night and having a terrible sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you travel, I'm a recovering nomad, so I know what that's like.
Yeah.
You're always on
Where
the
do you
road.
live now?
I am in Portugal. I'm in
Oof.
Tavira. It's the
See,
Algarve.
even that.
Yeah. It's a nice
That's
place.
amazing.
But it's like at least I have a place where I can hang my clothes. That brings
Yeah.
me good mental health. And knowing that I have a home base, I still travel a ton, but it's just this is now that's a whole other story. But I wanted to, so I like the things that helped you get through this change, or obviously the mental health is such a big piece. And I do
Mm.
remember you had a really lovely story of your breakdown and your husband sitting you down
Yeah.
and being there for
Yeah.
you. And I think the support is amazing
Yeah,
and
I
beautiful.
think partners are actually so important in this. And he was seeing that I was depressed, but he didn't really know what to do. We've got rescue dogs. And so whenever I would come home in tears, he would say, take one puppy and lie down. So that's how
Animal
I would
therapy.
cope. I just cuddle with my puppy in bed. But it got to the point where my negative self-talk, and I know everyone has negative self-talk, but this was to a level of screaming at me. And part of my job is I debate the news of the day on TV. So there's me and another journalist, and we go hammer and tong. There's a commercial break in the middle, but we're on air for 20 minutes, which is a long time to be. So it's normally about five topics. We only get the topics an hour before we go on air. So you've got to be really firing. No time for brain fog with my job. So I got to the point where I was quite severely depressed and still, and I think a lot of women do this, I could put the mask on and perform for that 20 minutes, but it would take such a toll that I'd be exhausted for the rest of the day. And I was driving home from the TV station, and the negative self-talk was so loud, and it was just yelling at me like, you just embarrass yourself on national TV. You're so stupid. Your parents would be ashamed of you. You should quit your job before you get fired because if you got fired, imagine how humiliating that would be. And it just
Horrible. No, these
took
words. Would you say that to
over.
your 5-year-old self?
Can you
No.
even, I wouldn't say it to another human being. Like the things that we say to ourselves is just awful. Anyway, that day I got home and I was in floods of tears. And I just said to my husband, I think I've got to quit my job. I'm not coping. And he sat me down. And I think that this is the kindest thing he's ever said to me. He said, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, but I think there might be something wrong with the chemicals in your brain. So let's go and see someone together. And
Oh,
he
support.
made the appointment. He came to the appointment with me, which was great because this was before I was on HRT. So I just cried the entire appointment. And he was the one telling the doctor, it's been more than 9 months like this. She's been to another doctor. This is what, and he filled her in. And I think having someone as your advocate when you can't advocate for yourself is so important. And it doesn't have to be your relationship partner, it could be a sister, it could be a friend. But I think, particularly with perimenopausal depression, you're not thinking straight. You need someone there. I wasn't even registering everything I was being told. So he took notes. Like it was just, he showed up in the most loving and beautiful way that I will never ever forget. And he was the one who got me on the path to get well again.
Oh, Kudos to him. That's wonderful. I just love that story. It's true love,
Yeah.
honestly. He's so cares so much about you. And it's absolutely right. When we're going through this transition, depression or not, having a support system. I mean, the research shows women who are supported or feel supported have better outcomes. And you had that. So I think that's one major thing to help as well as
I
the
did I
yeah.
did say to him, I said, how did you, when I was feeling better, I said, how did you know to put it in those terms? Because he's an Aussie bloke, like he's not
Yeah.
that in touch with his feelings. But he said to me, I knew I had to be really gentle with you because you were being so mean to yourself.
Oh, oh my goodness.
Isn't he the best?
He's the best. And he found the
Yeah.
words. And most people in general, not only men, don't know what perimenopausal depression is. They wouldn't put
Yeah.
these things together. And then very often people are getting divorced around this time of
Oh,
life
yeah.
because they're frustrated and they don't understand. And who has the patience, right? So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story. I just wanted you to make sure you said that because it's so
Yeah.
cute. So your HRT also helped you on your way. I think that was you said that was one of the biggest drivers for your
Yeah.
mental well-being, which is such a simple solution. My goodness, I wish more doctors knew about this, considering there's the side effects of antidepressants are long, and HRT, we've got side benefits.
I know. And so that's why I ended up campaigning in Parliament because, again, we need to change the fact that GPs aren't educated about this. We need to change the fear around HRT because that WHI study ruined the lives of millions and millions of women. And I think it's one of the biggest toxic health stories of our time. And there are still doctors who say, oh no, can't put you on HRT, it causes breast cancer. And my DMs just get filled up with women just saying, I tried, I followed your advice, but the doctor said no. And I'm just like, sack him, get another doctor.
Yeah.
And it has to get to the point where they start losing money. And so they're going to have to get informed. So, yeah, I campaigned in Australian Parliament in 2023. I was part of the first parliamentary roundtable about menopause. And can you believe 2023 was the first time the word menopause had ever been used in Australian Parliament?
You're kidding me. A little
2023.
late. Oh, that's so
Yeah,
crazy.
right. But the biggest things we were campaigning for was GP education, workplace education, and then also getting some of our HRT on the PBS, which is where we get health benefits, so it makes it cheaper, and a national education campaign. So a lot of things had to change, some pain clinics, all of that. And that initial meeting, and I shared my story in front of these politicians about the horrific bleeding and the how bad my mental health was. And that's what got mentioned in Parliament because I think often it's the personal stories and the lived experience that connect rather than the statistics. Like we don't have enough statistics in Australia. We have hardly any trials that have been created in Australia. We have to rely on the UK and America and use their information. But I'm very happy to let you know that then led to a Senate inquiry, and that led to $500 million grant for women's health from the government. And one of the first things that they've done is they've put one of the really good HRTs on the PBS at half the price of it. So
Wow, well
that's kind of
done.
cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool. And now any GP who is starting their career, it will be mandatory for them to study perimenopause and menopause. And then they're creating an online course that will go to existing GPs so that they can upskill. Now, this was 2023. It's still taking time. Like they haven't even done the course yet, but at least the ball's rolling. But I
Yes.
did go into the pharmacy when they made the HRT cheaper and I bought it and I stood beside it going, you're welcome, ladies. Yeah. Instead of $60 a month, it's now $30 a month.
Yes, which is so much. It's so much more reasonable. And in the US, I did this interesting poll about women around the world. What are they spending on their HRT? And
Yeah.
I spend €5 on progesterone, and that even lasts me 2 months because I'm only taking it half the month. And then you have in the US hundreds of dollars that people are
Hundreds.
spending on their HRT, and hundreds of dollars per month. I'm sorry, it's too expensive. How is
And that's right.
anyone
And then
supposed to
you
afford this?
create the haves and the have-nots because there are women who can't afford it.
Yeah.
And they should not be put in a position of not being able to afford having to feel well. Like that, the inequality is infuriating.
Yeah. What do you say? Sometimes these people pop up on my feed or somebody shares it with me. The information that says, oh, this has gone too far, this whole menopause talk, and it's not that bad. They're minimizing it and they say it's just causing fear in the younger generation, which I think it
Mm,
does. I mean, that's why they're following me and probably you. It's like, what's
yeah.
happening? And what can I do to avoid this? But what do you say to some of those people who say, oh, the ball is swung too far?
I say that I don't care that it swung too far. It's a pendulum. It has been in the negative for so long. It's time for it to be in the positive, and it might settle in the middle in a couple of years. But if anyone challenges me about being too vocal and, oh, that's secret women's business and you don't have to tell everyone about it, I'm like, I nearly lost my life. So if we look at the suicide rate of women in their entire lifespan, the highest rate is between ages 45 to 54. That's perimenopause. So don't tell me that I'm being loud. I'm saving lives. So I push back and I push back hard and I will not put up with that. I've done talkback radio where you'll get like the 70-year-old woman going, this women are just this generation's weak. We just got on with things.
Oh,
And I just say
they
to
deserve a
that, you know
badge of
what?
honor. Right.
Yeah, we don't need to suffering. You don't get a gold medal for suffering. You really don't. And this is actually also, let's not just talk about the suffering. Let's talk about the osteoporosis and the heart disease and the brain problems. Like you may say that you didn't have bad symptoms. I bet that your bones probably look like aero bars.
Yeah.
So let's be a little bit gracious and support women rather than pit us against each other because I'm not going to stand for that.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that because sometimes I think people feel that there's all this menopause talk all over and that's all they see on their feed. Well, that's because you programmed the algorithm because
Yeah,
most people
you
don't
probably
know
need
about
to see it.
menopause. Yeah, they don't know about menopause. They don't know very much about HRT. Only 4% to 10 or 15%, depending where you look in the world, are actually on HRT. And so
Yeah.
on it, most doctors are not informed. So,
I had a wonderful moment after the Sydney Opera House. My dad's 76 and he called me a couple of weeks and he mum came to the Opera House and he called me a couple of weeks later and he said, "You'll be very proud. I mentioned the word perimenopause in my men's group and one of the guys is 90 and he's like, what the hell's that?" And he said, and I had a chat about it and I'm like, "Oh, Dad, I could not be prouder. This is fantastic."
oh, that's good for him. And when I interview women around the world, I've done over 200 interviews where I just stop women on the street and I ask them questions about menopause. It's really crazy. And I will meet many women who are in their 60s or 70s who said, oh, I didn't do menopause or I didn't have menopause. And I was like, wait,
So,
do you
wow.
still have a period? And they said no. And I said, well, then you are in
Yeah,
menopause. You're
yeah,
postmenopause. I mean, this is what you're in it for the rest of your
yeah,
life. But they're associating a negative, bad symptom
yeah.
to this experience because so the word menopause, I guess, means a lot of things to different people. And what they don't realize is that because of menopause or because of the loss of their hormones, then they may have more brittle bones. They may have more sarcopenia. They may be more at risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, or this is maybe the reasons why they're feeling this way. And we are aging. I mean, that's going to
Yeah.
happen. We just want to age a little slower and then do what we can to protect our future selves. And that there's a whole slew of things that we can do, but people don't realize that women are having accelerated aging the moment we lose our hormones. And
Yeah.
this is
And I
what,
loved it in one of the podcasts that you did recently that I was listening to, where you said it's not about lifespan, it's about health span. And I'm like, oh, that is such a great way to talk about it because it's not about living longer, it's about living in a healthy way. And
yeah.
so you need to supplement your hormones if you want to do that.
Yeah. And it reminds me, actually, there was a podcast I heard with you on Dr. Louise Newson, and it
I
reminded
love
me, refreshed my
Louise.
memory. It was something about she looked at you and she said, you need hormones, or maybe your levels were not high enough, or something like
Yeah,
that.
no. So what happened was I was emceeing an event which was Louise and my psychiatrist are good friends. And so Louise came out to Australia and it was all about women's mental health. And at the time, I was persevering with a patch, but it was making my skin really inflamed and red and it wasn't sticking well. And so of course I did, but I just lifted my shirt up like in the lunch break and I'm like, Louise, I just don't feel great. And she's like, you're not absorbing that. You need to change HRT. You would be better on a gel because your skin is reacting. And so it was so funny. Obviously, she's not my doctor. I then had to go and see my own doctor. But it was funny. She brought it up in that podcast and she said, oh, I knew straight away that you were not getting what you needed. You needed to be on a different type of HRT, on a higher dose. And she's like, but I didn't know you well enough to say it
Yeah.
like that. But I've got to say, meeting Louise she is an earth angel and she gives good cuddles. How's that? I think that's a great description of someone. Like she has to be so strong. She is a trailblazer and she is leading the world, and yet she's soft and she's gentle and she gives you a cuddle when you need a cuddle. And I think that is just that perfect mix of that's how I want to be. It's amazing.
Yeah, dream doctor, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, she showed the other day on her social media her own patch that was not sticking well. I don't know if you saw that one. And she's
Yes.
like,
And
this is
it was on her
why.
back. It was like she heard the crinkling and it was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I love that she does that because I think a lot of other experts would not want to show that because they wouldn't want to be seen to not be perfect. And in fact, she's helping so many people by saying even she got it wrong. And she even openly admits that it was her daughter who helped her diagnose her perimenopause because she was like, "Oh, mum, are you due for your period? Because you are so cranky." And then she's like, "Actually, all of this is coming together right now." So I really love that vulnerability and authenticity that my favorite menopause experts have, that they're not perfect, they're not infallible, but they are fighting to make women's lives better.
Yeah, I love that they're so cohesive too. At least the women that we're talking
Yeah.
about, we mentioned already, because there are some others out there who seem to tear other people down.
Oh, we've
We
got that
don't.
in Australia too. And can I tell you, I actually learnt a lot from Louise because Louise gets attacked, but also Kelly Casperson, who I really admire and I find her hilarious. But she was asked to be part of an article when she was out here in Australia, and the title was Menno Wars about how these experts were pitted against each other. And she just refused to be in the article. But then what she did is she put the article up on her Instagram and says, here's why I refuse to be part of this story. We would not have male scientists being pitted against each other.
Mm,
This is turning it into a bitchy female thing. And in fact, I'm not buying into that.
yeah.
And I was just like, oh,
She's
golf clap. I wish I was in the article. It didn't come off well. And I wish that I had spoken to her ahead of time.
She's so on it. I just interviewed her
Yeah.
too, and it just blew my mind the way she thinks, and that's why I love following her. And I've got her book. I just ordered it, the
Yeah, so
pre-order,
I'm
and
listening to her book on Audible at the moment because I just love listening to her voice.
yeah.
But one of the quotes that I have from her in my book, which is my favorite thing, because a lot of women say, "Oh, I just want to do it naturally." And so Kelly's response to that is, if you want to go through this naturally, you better get rid of your reading glasses because wearing glasses is just because your eyes are aging. So that's not natural. If you want to just have a magnifying glass and squint, then that's you looking after your health naturally. We have the tools now. How about we use them?
I
Oh,
know, I
Shelley,
love
it's
that.
so good.
So good. I heard something very similar when I interviewed Dr. Felice Gersh, and I was so spot on because when you think about anything, why give a diabetic insulin? Let him die.
Yeah.
That's the way it's natural. It's natural to die early. It's thanks to our modern medicine that we're actually living longer. And my own hips, I would probably die a lot earlier if I didn't have my hips
Yeah.
replaced. So thank God I'm not doing this stuff naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also we now look at the HRT and it is body identical. So it is as natural as it can be. So I've started just reminding people when we had the WHI study, that was from pregnant horse urine. Like, yuck. Now it's from yams. And so that is natural. So I'm fine if you want to sip your chamomile tea, but let's actually look at what natural is. Natural does not mean suffering.
It's so funny because despite the WHI and how many loopholes, well, problems there were with that, and it's been since debunked. Even so, there were some really good outcomes with the horse urine. You're like, well, women were
Yeah,
actually still having lower incidence of breast cancer with the synthetic stuff. And actually, when you think about the horse urine, I'm somebody who eats liver and heart and stuff. I'm like, well, okay, to me, it's natural. I mean, I'm eat animals, so I'm not so grossed out by that. But the problem is that there's so many other estrogens, there's so many other chemicals in horse urine that
yeah,
is not the same as the one in our bodies. That's why I prefer not to take that. And certainly we now know if you're taking some oral estrogen, that's going to increase your risk of blood clotting and heart attacks.
yeah,
But why even go there when we have a cream that's identical to the ones in
exactly.
our body? It doesn't have all this extra stuff in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Transdermal's the way to go. Like everything's developing and getting better and better, and we are so lucky that now we are debunking that study and trying to rewrite the abuse of some very statistically insignificant results and just get the message out there. So my opinion is always women have a choice. So as much as I love HRT, if there are women who do not want to go on it, I'm like, that is your choice. As long as you are also doing something to look after your heart, your brain, your bones, and taking care of yourself that way. But how great that we have that choice. I just don't want someone to choose to not have HRT because they're afraid.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
just get that fear away, have an educated decision, and then go for it.
Yeah, I love that. And HRT or not, we always talk about you need the lifestyle changes anyways. Really,
Absolutely.
we need it. We have to wrap up here. I have still so many questions for you. I was researching more about you have a lot of discussion around the workplace and how to make it
Yes.
more menopause friendly. You have a co-founded Don't Sweat It. So tell us what's the number one change a company could make maybe
Yeah.
tomorrow that would have the biggest impact for women going through perimenopause.
So my biggest advice is education. So I think men and women need to be educated at the same time because I think that there's still that stigma of secret women's business and even saying the word perimenopause, some men feel uncomfortable. Now that I have been working in workplaces, and we're talking about like big banks and like some L'Oreal, huge companies, what I have found is, in fact, the men are curious and they are often very empathetic. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing or putting their foot in it. So for me, education is key. We need everyone on the same playing field. I look at menopause in the workplace the same as mental health in the workplace 10 years ago. And remember the stigma around anxiety and depression, and no one would talk about it. Now we have national awareness campaigns. We have regular education at works. We have mental health first aid officers in the workplace in Australia. So for me, what I want to do is make sure that the education is there so they even know the basics of what is perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. What are the symptoms to look out for? Once you're educated, then we can talk about symptom management. And for me, the big things and all of the research from around the world, the big things that show up in the workplace are brain fog, depression and anxiety, and the hot flushes. Now, there are some simple changes that can be made to help women through this transition. They have to help themselves, though. So it's about empowering the women to help themselves. But then when it comes to something like brain fog, if you say to your boss, I'm really not sleeping well, I keep getting brain fog where I'm forgetting words, and it's worse at 3 p.m. All the boss needs to do is go, you know what? We won't have our budget meeting at 3 p.m. We'll have it at 10 a.m. And just
Mhm.
those small changes can be so incredibly impactful. The other thing is, if everyone's educated at the same time, then you can actually have a support system at work. So you can say to your colleagues, if I forget the client's name in the middle of the meeting, jump in and save me.
Mhm.
And when you know you've got that little safety net underneath you, then you're not going to feel as anxious about it. And then just little things like making sure that you have access to cold water. It's ridiculous that the airlines make flight attendants wear hosiery, like
Yeah.
nylon. If you're having a hot flush, you don't want nylon. It's like you're going to self-combust. And I even went into the research and went, is it because of deep vein thrombosis? No, otherwise they'd have the men wearing them, but they don't. It's
Yeah.
just aesthetics. So once you start breaking that sort of thing down and making sure that uniforms, if your company has uniforms, don't make them out of polyester. Have them as breathable cotton, a breathable fabric. They're small changes, but big changes. So for me, it starts with education and then it builds from there. And I think the most important thing is that women don't feel like their career could be limited if they're saying that they have brain fog, is that they actually say it so that they can be supported rather than humiliated or feel like they're not going to get a promotion.
Those great tips. And it's always been a question that I almost could do a whole episode on the workplace and how these solutions, because you don't want to have, at least I don't think, like a menopause leave, or then people don't want to hire
No, so
older
I'm
women.
dead against menopause leave. So in Australia, a whole heap of the unions are saying women deserve menopause leave. But I'm like, don't give me 12 days off a year on something that is 365 days and lasts 10 years.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. And that costs companies a fortune. What we need is education so women can help themselves. And
Yeah.
it's so much cheaper. And you're
Yes.
going to help the women. Don't, because I've found some of the companies that just want to do menopause leave don't want to talk about it. So it's easier for them to go, just take a day off. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, 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 that's not actually a solution.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
that's a ticking a box and saying we care about women, shove them aside.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I agree. So that's really good that you're on board with that, because I was thinking, yeah, who's going to hire a woman who's in menopause? Or it's a good time to start firing them because we're going to have to give them some menopause leave. And
Yeah.
then it doesn't make any sense. We can't get 12 days of the year. I wish menopause were only 12 days of the year.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? So it doesn't make any sense. But I love the work that you're doing, and I love the awareness that you're bringing and your attitude. And just, it's so empowering. I think every single woman has got to get this book. I will have the link in the show notes. I'm Your Peri-Godmother. It's the best title ever. Is there anything that you'd like to leave with a woman who's listening now that would, I don't know, something, if there's one thing that she should learn from your book, what do you think that would be?
I think the biggest thing is that you're not alone. I felt so alone when I was going through it, and I was going through it blind. I had no information. So I'm hoping that by reading my book or listening to it on Audible, because trust me, if you listen to it on Audible, it's just like chatting to me over a wine. It's exactly like that. But having that education and knowing that, in fact, this can be a time where you create a beautiful sisterhood. And I have never felt more supported in my life than I have from other women who have gone through the same sort of rough time that I have. And women just saying, thank you. Thank you. I feel seen. I feel heard. And I don't feel like I'm going crazy. So for me, just be open to learning, be curious, educate yourself, and know your Perry godmother has your hand. I'll help you through it.
Ah, love it. Love that ending. And thank you for making HRT half the price.
Yes, there we
Thank you.
go.
Thank you.
You're Perry welcome.
You're
Yeah.
very welcome. I love it. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone who's listened to the end of the podcast. And we are so grateful that you're here and we value you. And thank you so much, Shelly, for giving us your time and your sharing your wisdom and your experience. And keep going. We're watching and waiting for maybe book number 2.
Oh, don't put that pressure on me. Jeez. Let's just stick to this one, okay?
Have a wonderful day, Shelly. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.